The stars shimmered in the darkness of space as the massive Krellian warship moved through the void. The vessel was called Dominance, and it lived up to its name. It stretched nearly 2 miles from front to back, covered in thick armor plating that had survived countless battles. Weapon ports lined its hull like the scales of some great metal beast. Inside, hundreds of Krellian warriors prepared for what they believed would be another easy victory. Commander Vexthor stood at the center of the bridge, his 4 powerful arms crossed over his chest. He was tall even for a Krellian, standing nearly 9 feet high. His skin had a gray-blue tint that marked him as a veteran of many campaigns. Scars crossed his face and arms, each one a story of battle. His eyes, large and black, reflected the glow of the tactical displays surrounding him. The bridge hummed with activity. Officers moved between stations, checking weapon systems and shield generators. The air smelled of metal and the sharp tang of the atmosphere the Krellians preferred. Everything was efficient, organized, perfect. This was how the Krellians had conquered 40 systems. This was how they had built the greatest military force in the known galaxy. "Status report," Vexthor commanded, his voice deep and resonant. His second officer, a younger Krellian named Zekrel, approached and bowed slightly. "Commander, the fleet is assembled. 27 vessels in total. We have 9 heavy cruisers, 12 destroyers, and 6 support ships. All weapons are charged. All shields are at full power." Vexthor nodded slowly. "And the target?" "The 3rd planet in the system designated as Sol. The inhabitants call it Earth. Our scouts confirmed they achieved faster than light travel only 3 cycles ago. Their technology is primitive. Their largest warship is less than half the size of our smallest destroyer." A clicking sound came from Vexthor's throat, the Krellian equivalent of laughter, and they dared to refuse the Accord's generous offer of membership. "They claim their world is independent," Zekrel said, his mandibles twitching with amusement. "They demand we respect their sovereignty. They even threatened to defend themselves if we approach their system." Several officers on the bridge made the clicking sound now. The idea was absurd. This species called humans had no idea what real military power looked like. They had no understanding of the Galactic Accord, the alliance of 17 species that controlled this entire region of space. The Accord brought order to chaos. It brought civilization to primitive worlds. And when those worlds refused, the Krellian Empire brought force. Vexthor moved to the central display, where a holographic image of the Sol system floated in the air. 9 planets orbited a yellow star. The 3rd planet glowed blue and green, covered in water and land. It looked peaceful, beautiful even. Soon it would be compliant. "Tell me about these humans," Vexthor said. A science officer stepped forward, pulling up data on a secondary screen. "They are bipedal like the Hevians. Average height is between 5 and 6 feet. They have only 2 arms, 2 legs. No natural weapons to speak of. No claws, no venom, no armored skin. Physically, they are quite weak compared to most spacefaring species. Military capabilities? Limited. We intercepted their public broadcasts. They have conflicts among themselves, small wars over resources and territory. Their weapons are crude. Chemical explosives, basic energy weapons, simple kinetic projectiles. They have nuclear devices but rarely use them. Their space fleet consists of maybe 40 vessels, most designed for exploration and cargo transport." Vexthor studied the data with interest. "They fight among themselves?" "Constantly, Commander. They have never unified as a species. Hundreds of separate nations exist on their world. They seem incapable of peace for any extended period. This was not unusual. Most primitive species struggled with unity. The Krellians themselves had been divided once, thousands of cycles ago, before the Great Unification Wars. But that was ancient history. Now the Krellians were one people, one empire, one unstoppable force. "How many warnings have we sent?" Vexthor asked. 3, Commander. Each time they respond with the same message. They will not submit. They will not join the Accord. They claim the right to determine their own future. Vexthor's expression hardened. This was the part he always found tedious. The Accord preferred peaceful integration. It was better when species joined willingly, contributed their resources and knowledge to the greater whole. But when they refused, when they let pride overcome sense, then the Krellian Empire had to act. It was never pleasant, but it was necessary. "Very well," he said. "We proceed as planned. The fleet will enter their system in 14 standard hours. We will take position above their homeworld. We will give them one final chance to surrender. If they refuse, we will demonstrate our power by eliminating their orbital installations and their largest city. After that, they will understand. And if they still refuse, Commander, then we will continue until they do understand. Or until there is nothing left to refuse with. It was a simple formula, one the Krellians had perfected over centuries. Show overwhelming force. Demonstrate the futility of resistance. Give the enemy a chance to surrender with some dignity and tact. Most species accepted by the second demonstration. Some required 3 or 4. Only twice in Krellian history had a species fought to complete extinction. Vexthor hoped the humans would be smarter than that. He looked at the image of Earth again. From space, it truly was beautiful. He wondered what it would look like after the demonstrations. Would those blue oceans still shine? Would those green lands still bloom? It didn't really matter. What mattered was adding another species to the Accord, expanding their territory, maintaining order in the galaxy. Set course, he commanded. Maximum speed. I want to arrive with enough time to deploy the fleet in perfect formation. Let the humans see what true military precision looks like. The officers moved to their stations. The Dominance's engines flared brighter. Around it, the rest of the fleet began to move, each ship taking its assigned position. They moved like a school of fish, perfectly synchronized, beautiful in their coordination. This was the result of thousands of years of military tradition. This was the power of the greatest warriors in the galaxy. Vexthor returned to his command chair and settled into it. He felt confident, as he always did before battle. He had fought in 37 campaigns. He had subjugated 12 worlds. He had never lost a battle, never even come close. These humans would be no different. In a few days, their planet would be part of the Accord. Their people would serve the greater good. Their resources would fuel the Empire. It was inevitable. It was destiny. It was simply how the galaxy worked. The Dominance and its fleet jumped to faster-than-light speed, leaving the safety of Accord space behind. They were headed for Earth, for an encounter with a species they knew almost nothing about. The Krellians brought certainty and confidence with them. They brought the weight of history and the might of empire. What they didn't bring was caution. And that would change everything. Captain Jake Morrison sat in the command chair of the USS Defiant, his eyes fixed on the main view screen. The bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of electronics and the occasional beep from a console. His crew worked at their stations with focused intensity. Everyone knew what was coming. Everyone knew this moment would define humanity's place in the galaxy. Jake was 42 years old, with short brown hair starting to show gray at the temples. He had spent 20 years in Earth's military forces, fighting in conflicts across 3 continents before humanity reached for the stars. His face showed the wear of those years, lines around his eyes and mouth that came from too many hard decisions. But his hands were steady on the armrests of his chair. His voice, when he spoke, was calm. "Status report, Lieutenant Grant." Sophie Grant looked up from her tactical station. She was younger than the captain, only 30, with blonde hair pulled back in a tight bun. Her fingers moved across her console with practiced speed. "Long-range sensors confirm 27 hostile vessels approaching, sir. They're maintaining a standard formation. Speed suggests they'll reach the outer edge of our system in 13 hours and 40 minutes. Ship classifications: 9 heavy cruisers, 12 destroyers, 6 support vessels. They're big, sir. The smallest one outmasses us by a factor of 3. Jake nodded slowly. He had expected this. Earth Command had provided all the intelligence they had on the Krellian Empire. The aliens were known for overwhelming force. They believed in shock and awe, in making resistance seem pointless. It had worked for them for centuries. "Commander Foster, how are we looking?" Ryan Foster sat at the navigation console, his dark eyes focused on his screens. He was the oldest member of the bridge crew at 48, a veteran like Jake. They had served together before in older conflicts. "All systems green, Captain. The Defiant is ready. Weapons charged, shields at maximum, engines running hot. We can be at combat speed in 30 seconds. Good. Lieutenant Carter, any response to our diplomatic messages?" Ben Carter shook his head. He was the communications officer, a slim man with red hair and pale skin. "Nothing, sir. They've ignored every transmission. Either they're not interested in talking or they don't think we're worth talking to." Jake allowed himself a thin smile. "Probably both. They think we're primitives. They think this will be easy." To be fair, sir, Sophie said quietly. On paper, they should win. 27 ships against 1. Their combined firepower exceeds ours by an order of magnitude. On paper, Jake agreed. But wars aren't fought on paper, Lieutenant. They're fought by people who want to survive, who fight with everything they have. He stood up from his chair and walked to the view screen, looking out at the stars. Do you know what every member of this crew has in common? No one answered. They knew the captain was making a point. Every single person on this ship is a veteran of Earth's wars. Every single one of us has fought other humans. We've seen what people do to each other when everything is on the line. We've learned lessons written in blood across thousands of years of history. He turned to face his crew. The Krellians have fought other species. They're good at it. But we fought ourselves. And there's no more dangerous opponent than your own kind. The bridge was silent for a moment. Then Sophie spoke up. Orders, sir? We take position in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. We prepare the surprises we've left there. And we wait. When they arrive, we give them one last chance to turn around. One last chance to avoid this. And if they don't take it, Ryan asked, then we teach them why humanity has survived every threat we've ever faced. We show them what we're really made of. Jake returned to his command chair. He pulled up the tactical display, studying the asteroid belt they would be using. Earth Command had been preparing this battlefield for weeks, ever since the first Krellian scout ship had entered their system. Humanity might be new to space, but they were very old at war. The hours passed slowly. The Defiant moved into position, hiding among the massive rocks that orbited between the 4th and 5th planets. The crew ran through their drills, checking and rechecking every system. In the hangar bay, fighter pilots prepared their craft. In engineering, teams made sure the reactor was running at peak efficiency. Throughout the ship, Marines checked their weapons and armor. Jake made his rounds, visiting each section of the ship. He wanted his crew to see him, to know he was confident. Leadership was as much about appearance as reality. If he showed fear, they would feel it. If he showed strength, they would find their own. In the crew quarters, he found a young ensign named Danny Price staring at a photo. The kid was barely 23, fresh from the academy. What's that, Ensign? Danny jumped to attention. My family, sir. Back in Colorado. My mom, my dad, my little sister. Jake looked at the photo. A smiling family at some park. Mountains in the background. Ordinary people living ordinary lives. That's what we're protecting, son. That's what this is all about. I know, sir. I just hope I'm ready. You're ready. You wouldn't be on this ship if you weren't. Jake put a hand on the young man's shoulder. Trust your training. Trust your crew. And remember, fear is normal. It keeps you sharp. It's what you do with that fear that matters. Danny nodded, looking a bit more steady. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Jake continued his rounds. In the medical bay, Dr. Lisa Hayes was organizing supplies. In the armory, Gunnery Sergeant Mike Chen was distributing ammunition. Everyone was preparing in their own way. Everyone understood what was at stake. Finally, the moment arrived. The sensor alarm sounded. Captain to the bridge, Sophie's voice came over the intercom. They're here. Jake strode onto the bridge and took his seat. The view screen showed the Krellian fleet emerging from faster-than-light travel. They appeared in perfect formation, their ships arranged in a pattern that looked almost beautiful. 27 vessels, each one bristling with weapons, each one larger than anything humanity had built. Impressive, Ryan muttered. It's meant to be, Jake said. Ben, open a channel. One last try. Channel open, sir. Jake took a breath. Attention, Krellian fleet. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth vessel Defiant. You are entering sovereign human territory without permission. You have ignored our diplomatic requests. You have threatened our homeworld. I am authorized to tell you one final time. Turn your ships around and leave our system. If you continue this approach, we will consider it an act of war and respond accordingly. For a long moment, there was no response. Then the view screen changed. A massive alien appeared, gray-blue skin, 4 arms, black eyes that seemed to hold no emotion at all. I am Commander Vexthor of the Krellian Empire, the alien said, his voice deep and resonant even through the translation software. You cannot threaten us, human. You have one small ship. We have an armada. You have primitive weapons. We have the finest military force in the galaxy. This is your last chance. Surrender now. Submit to the Galactic Accord and your world will be spared unnecessary suffering. Jake looked at the alien commander for a long moment. Then he smiled, though there was no humor in it. Commander Vexthor, you've made a mistake. You've studied our broadcasts. You've looked at our commercial ships. You think you know what humanity is capable of, but you don't know what we've built in secret. You don't know what we've learned from 10,000 years of killing each other. And you're about to find out. He made a cutting motion to Ben and the channel closed. Battle stations, Jake said quietly. All hands, this is the captain. The enemy has chosen war. Show them what humanity brings to the fight. Show them what we are. Throughout the ship, alarms began to sound. Red lights flashed. Weapons came online. The Defiance engines flared to life. The first battle for Earth's independence was about to begin. Commander Vexthor watched the human ship on his display with a mixture of pity and annoyance. The vessel was hiding among the asteroids, using the massive rocks for cover like a prey animal hiding in tall grass. It was a coward's tactic, one that would only delay the inevitable. The Krellian fleet moved forward with confidence, maintaining their perfect formation. Analysis of the human vessel? Vexthor asked. His tactical officer, a scarred veteran named Torvik, pulled up data. The ship is approximately 800 meters in length. It appears to be a destroyer-class vessel. Weapon signatures suggest railgun technology and missile systems. Defensive capabilities include energy shields, but they appear weak compared to our own. I estimate we could destroy it with a single coordinated strike from 3 of our cruisers. They hide in the asteroid field, Zekral observed. Should we pursue them into it? Vexthor considered this. The asteroids would provide some cover for the human ship, but they would also limit the Krellians' ability to use their numerical advantage. Better to draw the prey out into open space. No, we will flush them out. Target the larger asteroids near their position. Destroy them with our main weapons. The debris field will either crush them or force them to emerge. A sound strategy, Commander, Torvik said. The order went out across the fleet. 9 heavy cruisers moved to the front of the formation, their main weapons charging. Energy readings spiked across Vexthor's displays. The power being gathered could crack a small moon. It would certainly destroy a few rocks. Fire, Vexthor commanded. 9 beams of concentrated energy lanced out across the darkness. They struck the asteroids around the human ship, and massive explosions blossomed in space. Rock vaporized instantly. Debris scattered in all directions. It was an impressive display of raw power, exactly what the Krellians wanted the humans to see. Then the asteroids fired back. What? Vexthor started to say, but the words died in his throat. The rocks that the Krellians had dismissed as natural debris suddenly came alive. Dozens of them weren't asteroids at all. They were mines, carefully disguised, placed here over weeks of preparation, and now they detonated in a carefully coordinated pattern. Nuclear fire erupting across the Krellian formation. The Dominance's shields flared as 3 mines detonated nearby. The ship rocked from the impact. Alarms began to sound, but Vexthor's ship was at the back of the formation. The vessels at the front weren't as lucky. The destroyer Conquest simply vanished, consumed by nuclear fire from 4 mines that had been positioned perfectly around it. The cruiser subjugator's shields collapsed under the onslaught, and secondary explosions tore through its hull. Another destroyer, the Swift Strike, tumbled away from the formation, its engines dead, its hull breached in a dozen places. Evasive maneuvers. Vexthor roared, "All ships, break formation!" But breaking formation was exactly what the humans wanted. As the Krellian ship scattered, trying to avoid the mines they now knew were hidden everywhere, the human vessel emerged from behind a genuine asteroid. And it was moving fast, much faster than its size should have allowed. The Defiance engines burned bright blue as it accelerated into the confused Krellian formation. Its weapons were already firing before Vexthor could even give an order. The first shots weren't energy beams. They were solid projectiles, tungsten rods accelerated to incredible speeds by magnetic rails. The Krellian shields designed to deflect energy weapons might as well have been paper. The railgun rounds punched straight through, continuing on to strike the hull beneath. The cruiser Pride of Krellia took a direct hit to its command section. The tungsten rod, traveling at a significant fraction of light speed, carried such kinetic energy that it didn't just penetrate the hull. It vaporized everything it touched, creating a tunnel of destruction through the entire length of the ship. The Pride of Krellia broke in half and began to drift apart. "Return fire," Vexthor commanded. "All ships target that vessel." Energy beams lanced out from a dozen Krellian ships. But the human vessel was already moving, its trajectory constantly changing in ways that seemed almost random. The Krellians were used to enemy ships that moved in predictable patterns, following the standard rules of engagement that all civilized species observed. The Defiant followed no such rules. It dove toward a cluster of asteroids, forcing 3 Krellian destroyers to cease fire or risk hitting each other. It rolled suddenly, presenting its dorsal surface, where additional weapons fired a spread of missiles. These weren't dumb projectiles either. Each missile had its own guidance system, its own ability to track and pursue. The destroyer Vengeance tried to shoot down the incoming missiles with its point defense systems. It managed to destroy 4 of them. The 5th missile jinked sideways at the last moment, avoiding the defensive fire, and struck the ship's engine section. The explosion was catastrophic. The Vengeance went dark and began to tumble. On the Dominance's bridge, chaos reigned. Officers shouted reports. Screens showed ship after ship taking damage or being destroyed. In less than 5 minutes of combat, the Krellian fleet had lost 7 vessels. 7 ships eliminated by a single enemy destroyer. How are they doing this? Sekral demanded, his voice cracking with something that might have been fear. Torvik, the tactical officer, was frantically analyzing the human ship's movements. Commander, their tactics are unlike anything in our database. They don't follow standard engagement protocols. They're using the asteroids for cover, attacking from unexpected angles, employing weapons specifically designed to defeat our defenses. It's as if they knew exactly how we would fight. Explain, Vexthor demanded, forcing his voice to remain steady even as another ship, the Hammer, reported critical damage. Sir, they're fighting the way one fights an equal opponent, not a superior force. They show no deference to our numbers. They're using asymmetric warfare, guerrilla tactics, combined with precision strikes on our most vulnerable points. This suggests extensive combat experience against opponents who also knew their weaknesses. The truth hit Vexthor like a physical blow. The humans had been fighting each other for their entire history. They had refined these tactics against enemies who knew all their tricks, who could anticipate their moves, who were just as clever and desperate. The Krellians had mastered war against aliens. The humans had mastered war against themselves. All ships reform, Vexthor ordered. Group together, provide covering fire for each other. Don't let them isolate anyone. It was sound tactical thinking. By grouping together, the Krellian ships could support each other, create overlapping fields of fire. It should have worked, but the human ship didn't try to isolate anyone. Instead, it changed tactics entirely. It accelerated away from the formation, moving at full speed toward the edge of the asteroid belt. For a moment, Vexthor thought it was retreating. Then he realized the truth. They're leading us, he said quietly. Commander, Sekral asked, it's a fighting retreat. They're drawing us deeper into the asteroid field, where their advantages are greater and ours are lessened. They're controlling the battlefield, choosing where and how we fight. Even as he spoke, the Defiant demonstrated this truth. It passed close to another cluster of asteroids, and more mines detonated, this time positioned to hit any ships that followed. The destroyer Relentless took the full force of 2 nuclear explosions and simply ceased to exist. We need to withdraw, Torvik said quietly. Commander, we're losing this engagement. We should retreat to a safe distance and reassess. Vexthor's claws dug into his command chair. Every instinct screamed at him to disagree, to push forward, to overwhelm the enemy through sheer determination. That was the Krellian way. That was how they had won every battle for 1,000 cycles. But another part of him, the part that had kept him alive through 37 campaigns, recognized the truth. This wasn't a battle they could win. Not here, not now, not against an enemy that fought like this. All ships, he said, each word painful. Begin withdrawal. Combat retreat to jump coordinates. Maintain defensive formations. As the order went out, the human ship made one last attack run. It came in fast, fired another spread of railgun rounds that crippled the cruiser Dominion, then accelerated away before anyone could return fire effectively. Then, suddenly, it stopped pursuing. It simply hung there in space, its weapons still charged but not firing. A message came through on all frequencies. Captain Jake Morrison's face appeared on the view screen. He looked tired, Vexthor thought. Not triumphant, just tired. You have 10 minutes to leave our system, the human said. Tell your Accord that Earth is not interested in joining. Tell them what happens when they threaten humanity. Tell them we really, really hope it never comes to a real war, because this was just a warning. The channel closed. Vexthor looked at his tactical display. 17 ships remained of his original 27. 10 ships lost, hundreds of Krellian warriors dead, and the human was saying this was just a warning. Withdraw, Vexthor said quietly. Maximum speed. As the Krellian fleet limped away from the Sol system, Vexthor couldn't stop thinking about those final words. Just a warning, which meant the humans had been holding back, which meant they could have done worse, which meant Earth had military capabilities the Krellians hadn't even seen yet. The Dominance limped through space at reduced speed, its damaged engines straining to maintain even half of normal velocity. Around it, the survivors of the Krellian fleet traveled in loose formation, their perfect military precision shattered along with their confidence. Inside the medical bay, doctors worked frantically to save the wounded. In engineering, repair teams struggled to patch hull breaches and restore failing systems. On the bridge, Commander Vexthor sat in his command chair and stared at the tactical display showing their retreat path. The silence was oppressive. No one spoke. No one wanted to be the first to acknowledge what had just happened. The greatest military force in the Galactic Accord had been defeated by a single ship from a species they had dismissed as primitive. Zekril finally broke the silence. Casualty reports are coming in, Commander. The numbers are worse than we initially thought. Tell me, Vexthor said, his voice hollow. 10 ships completely destroyed. The Conquest, the Subjugator, the Swift Strike, the Pride of Krelia, the Vengeance, the Hammer, the Relentless, the Fury, the Thunder, and the Avenger. Total crew losses on those vessels alone exceed 4,000 warriors. Vexthor closed his eyes. 4,000 Krellians dead. 4,000 families who would receive the death notification. 4,000 warriors who had believed in the Empire's invincibility. The surviving ships? He asked. 7 vessels sustained critical damage. The Dominion is running on emergency power only. The Swift Victory lost its main weapons array. The Conqueror has a 30% hull breach and is venting atmosphere from 3 decks. The others have varying degrees of damage. Only 4 ships in the fleet are still combat ready, and even those have depleted shields and weapons. Vexthor opened his eyes and looked at his second officer. How long were we engaged in active combat with the human vessel? Zekril checked his console. 14 minutes, Commander. From the moment the first mines detonated until we began our withdrawal. 14 minutes, 14 minutes. In less than a quarter of an hour, humanity had accomplished what no species had done in Krellian history. They had broken the Empire's fleet. They had shattered the myth of invincibility that the Krellians had built over centuries. Torvik approached from the tactical station. The old warrior looked shaken, his mandibles trembling slightly. Commander, I have completed my analysis of the battle. You need to see this. Vexthor gestured for him to continue. The human vessel was designed specifically for asymmetric warfare. Every weapon system, every defensive measure, every aspect of its construction was built with one purpose: to fight a superior force and win. The railguns penetrate energy shields because humanity studied captured data on our shield technology and designed weapons to bypass it. The missiles use guidance systems far more advanced than we expected, because humanity has spent decades fighting opponents who could shoot down conventional missiles. They prepared for us, Vexthor said quietly. Yes, Commander. But more than that, they prepared for anyone. The tactical database in my console contains records of every major battle in Krellian history. I compared our tactics today to our historical patterns. We fought exactly as we always have. Organized formations, overwhelming firepower, direct assault. The humans countered every single one of our standard tactics. They knew what we would do before we did it. Zekril spoke up. How is that possible? We never shared our tactical doctrine with them. They had no access to our military records. Torvik's expression was grim. They didn't need access, sir. Our tactics are efficient, effective, proven through countless victories. They're also predictable. Any military analyst studying our public engagements could determine our general approach. The humans did exactly that. Then they designed a ship specifically to defeat us. Vexthor felt something cold settle in his chest. Pull up the human historical database. The one our scouts compiled from their broadcasts. A technician worked the console and data began flowing across the screens. Records of human conflicts. Images of their wars. Casualty statistics that made even hardened Krellian warriors pause. Focus on their major conflicts in the last 1,000 cycles of their history, Vexthor commanded. The data narrowed. War after war scrolled past, conflicts that lasted years, even decades, battles that killed millions, weapons that grew more sophisticated with each generation. Chemical weapons, biological weapons, nuclear weapons, weapons designed not just to defeat an enemy but to terrorize them, to break their will to fight. Now show me their casualty rates, Vexthor said. The numbers appeared. In a single war they called the Second World War, over 70 million humans had died. In another conflict called the Mongol conquests, even more. Smaller wars, regional conflicts, civil disputes, all adding up to a staggering total. Over the last 5,000 cycles, humanity had killed more than 1 billion of its own kind. The bridge fell silent as the Krellians processed this information. 1 billion casualties, not from natural disasters or disease or accidents, from war, from humans killing other humans. They've been practicing, Zekrel whispered. For their entire history, they've been practicing war against the most dangerous opponent possible. Themselves. Torvik nodded slowly. Every conflict taught them lessons. Every defeat made them adapt. Every victory showed them what worked. They didn't just learn tactics. They learned how to think like their enemy, to anticipate and counter, because their enemy thought exactly like they did. Vexthor stood from his chair and walked to the view screen. Behind them, the Sol system grew smaller, just another point of light among billions. But it wasn't just another system anymore. It was a threat, a real, genuine threat to the Accord's dominance. The Krellian Empire has never faced an opponent like this, Vexthor said quietly. We've fought species that were peaceful by nature. We've fought species that had warrior traditions but limited experience. We've fought species that were technologically advanced but philosophically opposed to violence. We've never fought a species that has spent 10,000 cycles perfecting the art of killing its own kind. What do we do, Commander? Zekrel asked. Vexthor turned to face his officers. We report to the Accord Council. We tell them everything, and we recommend that Earth be left alone, completely alone. The Council will not accept a recommendation of retreat, Torvik said. They will see it as weakness. They will demand we return with a larger fleet, overwhelm the humans through sheer numbers. Then the Council will doom us all. Vexthor said flatly, Do you understand what I saw in that battle? The human captain could have destroyed our entire fleet. Those mines in the asteroid field, there were hundreds more that never detonated. We detected at least 40 additional clusters after we withdrew. If Captain Morrison had wanted to, he could have eliminated every single ship. But he didn't. He showed mercy, Zekrel said. No, he showed restraint. There's a difference. Mercy is sparing an enemy because you pity them. Restraint is sparing an enemy because you're strong enough to choose not to kill. The humans wanted to send a message, not commit genocide. That level of controlled violence is more terrifying than rage. Vexthor pulled up the image of Captain Morrison from the communication logs. The human's face looked tired, yes, but also sad. As if he had hoped the Krellians would turn back, would choose peace. As if he took no pleasure in the deaths his weapons had caused. This is a species that has rules for war, Vexthor continued. They have laws about what is acceptable in combat and what is not. They have entire philosophies about just war versus unjust war. They can be brutal, yes, but they're not mindless killers. They're intelligent, ethical, and experienced. That's what makes them so dangerous. He turned back to his crew. We fought one ship today. One ship with one crew using a small portion of humanity's military capacity. Earth has millions of soldiers. Thousands of ships under construction. Industrial capacity we can only estimate. If we push them, if we force them into total war, they will bring all of that capacity to bear, and they will not stop until either we are destroyed or they are. Surely the Accords combined might could defeat them, a junior officer suggested hesitantly. Perhaps, Vexthor said, if every species in the Accord committed every ship, every warrior, every resource. If we were willing to accept casualties in the millions or billions, if we were prepared for a war that might last decades. But even then, I'm not certain we would win, because humans have something we don't. What's that, Commander? Zekrel asked. Vexthor looked at the image of Earth one last time. Experience. Real, hard-won experience in fighting desperate wars against enemies who know all their weaknesses. We've conquered 40 systems, but we've never truly been tested. We've never faced an opponent that could beat us. Humanity has faced that opponent every single day of their existence. They've been fighting themselves, learning from every mistake, adapting to every strategy. They're not just good at war. War is in their blood, their culture, their very nature. The bridge remained silent as his words sank in. Finally, Zekral spoke. The council will want revenge for this defeat. Then the council will have to find someone else to lead the fleet, Vexthor said. Because I will not throw away Krellian lives in a war we cannot win. I will not be responsible for starting a conflict that could destroy the Accord itself. The Galactic Accord Council Chamber was a marvel of architecture and technology. Located on the neutral world of Concordia, the chamber was a massive dome that could comfortably hold representatives from all 17 member species. The walls were transparent, showing the stars beyond. The floor was polished stone that reflected the lights above. It was designed to inspire awe, to remind everyone present that they were part of something greater than themselves. Today, the chamber felt small and suffocating. Elder Cross, the Zephite who led the council, sat at the center of the curved table. His species was ancient, their civilization spanning thousands of cycles longer than any other in the Accord. His skin was translucent, showing the bioluminescent organs beneath. His eyes were large and multifaceted, able to see in spectrums other species could barely imagine. When he spoke, his voice was soft but carried authority earned over centuries of leadership. Commander Vexthor, Cross said, "You may present your full report." Vexthor stood at the center of the chamber. He was alone, without his crew, without support. Every representative of every species watched him, some with curiosity, some with suspicion, some with barely concealed contempt. "Honored representatives," Vexthor began, 20 days ago I led a fleet of 27 vessels to the Sol system. Our mission was to subjugate the species known as humans and bring their world into the Accord. I have returned with 17 ships, 10 destroyed, and over 4,000 Krellian warriors dead. We were defeated by a single human warship in an engagement lasting 14 minutes. The chamber erupted. Representatives from a dozen species began shouting at once. Questions, accusations, demands for explanation. The Hevian ambassador, a tall being with golden fur, stood up from her seat. "This is impossible," she declared. "The Krellian Empire has never been defeated. You must be exaggerating or incompetent or both." "I assure you, Ambassador, I am neither," Vexthor said calmly. "I have brought complete tactical recordings of the engagement. You may review them yourselves." Cross raised one delicate hand and the chamber fell silent. "Show us." A technician activated the holographic display. The center of the chamber filled with three-dimensional images of the battle. Every member of the council watched in stunned silence as the events unfolded. The mines detonating, the human ship emerging at impossible speed, the railgun rounds punching through shields, ships exploding or going dark, the Krellian fleet in disarray, trying and failing to land a hit on their single opponent. When the recording ended, the silence was absolute. The Manthar representative, a being that looked like a floating collection of crystals, spoke in a voice like chimes. "This cannot be accurate. No single ship could cause such devastation." "The recordings are accurate," Vexthor said. "I wish they were not, but they are. The humans fought with tactics and weapons we had never encountered. More importantly, they fought with a level of skill that suggests extensive combat experience." "Experience against whom?" the Hevian ambassador demanded. "They only achieved space travel a few cycles ago. What enemies could they have fought?" Vexthor pressed a control and new images appeared. Records from Earth's history, battles, wars, conflicts spanning thousands of cycles. The council members watched in growing horror as casualty numbers scrolled past. Millions dead in single conflicts. Entire cities destroyed. Weapons of terrifying sophistication and brutality. "They fought themselves," Vexthor said quietly. "For their entire recorded history, humanity has been in a state of near-constant warfare. They have refined combat tactics against the most dangerous opponent possible, their own kind. Every strategy they developed was immediately countered by enemies who thought the same way, who had access to the same technology, who were equally desperate to survive. This created an evolutionary pressure that honed their military capabilities to a level we have never seen." A Krellian council member, General Kravesh, slammed his fist on the table. "So we send a larger fleet. We overwhelm them with numbers. We commit the full might of the Empire if necessary." "No," Vexthor said firmly. "General, with respect, that would be suicide. The engagement you just witnessed was a warning. The human captain specifically told us this was a warning, which means they held back. which means their true military capability exceeds what we saw. You're afraid, Kravesh sneered. You're letting one defeat turn you into a coward. Vexthor met the general's gaze steadily. Yes, I'm afraid. I'm terrified. And so should you be. I have fought in 37 campaigns. I have conquered 12 worlds. I thought I understood war. But what I saw near Earth was something different. Something we are not prepared for. Cross leaned forward. Explain, Commander. Help us understand. Vexthor chose his words carefully. The Accord has brought order to this region of space through the Krellian military. We are effective because we follow proven strategies. We train extensively. We maintain discipline. We use overwhelming force to minimize casualties on both sides. This approach has worked for centuries against species that either had no military tradition or limited combat experience. He paused, gathering his thoughts. Humanity is different. They don't just have a military tradition. They have hundreds of distinct military traditions, developed independently by different nations on their world. They've spent 10,000 cycles fighting wars of extinction against enemies who knew all their tricks. They've developed tactics for every situation imaginable. Guerrilla warfare, naval combat, air superiority, psychological operations, economic warfare. They have strategies for winning and strategies for losing gracefully. They have rules for conduct in war and rules for when those rules don't apply. You make them sound invincible. The Manthar representative chimed. No, not invincible, but experienced. Terrifyingly experienced. And more importantly, they showed restraint. Captain Morrison could have destroyed my entire fleet. The asteroid field where we engaged them was seeded with hundreds of mines. Only a fraction detonated. The rest remained dormant. A clear message that humanity could have inflicted far worse casualties but chose not to. Cross's bioluminescent organs pulsed thoughtfully. Why would they show such restraint? Because they're not monsters, Vexthor said. They're intelligent beings who understand the difference between necessary force and excessive violence. They wanted to deter us, not exterminate us. This suggests a sophisticated understanding of conflict resolution and escalation management. These are not mindless killers. They're warriors who have learned when to fight and when to show mercy. The Hevian ambassador spoke again, her tone more thoughtful now. What are you recommending, Commander? I recommend we acknowledge Earth's sovereignty. We send a formal apology for the invasion attempt. We establish diplomatic relations on equal terms, not as conquerors and conquered. We learn from them instead of trying to dominate them. Unacceptable, General Kravesh growled. The Accord does not negotiate with primitives. We do not apologize for bringing order to chaos. They're not primitives, Vexthor said, his voice sharp. That's the mistake I made, and it cost 4,000 lives. They're a species that has survived countless wars, countless disasters, countless threats. They reached the stars not because the universe was kind to them, but because they refused to die no matter how hard their own world tried to kill them. They are survivors. They are fighters, and they are ready for us. Cross stood, his ancient frame moving slowly but with dignity. The Council will debate this matter and vote on a course of action. Commander Vexthor, you are dismissed. You have served the Accord well by bringing us this difficult truth. Vexthor bowed and left the chamber. As he walked through the corridors of the Council building, he wondered what they would decide. Would they listen to wisdom or pride? Would they choose peace or war? Meanwhile, on Earth, Captain Jake Morrison stood in a briefing room at Earth Defense Headquarters. General Patricia Cole, Supreme Commander of humanity's military forces, sat across the table from him. She was 60 years old, gray hair cut short, face lined with years of command decisions. On the wall behind her, a flag showed Earth from space, blue and green and beautiful. Good work, Captain, Cole said. Your restraint prevented unnecessary casualties on both sides. The politicians are pleased. The military is pleased. Hell, even the peace activists are grudgingly pleased. Jake nodded but didn't smile. Thank you, General. But I need you to understand something. We won that engagement because we had every advantage. Home territory, prepared battlefield, the element of surprise. And we still lost good people. 3 crew members died when that Krellian cruiser got a lucky shot through our shields. 8 more wounded. I know, Cole said quietly. I've read the casualty reports. If they come back with a real fleet, if they commit to total war, we'll bleed them. We'll make them pay for every inch of space, but we'll lose too, a lot. And I don't know if Earth is ready for that. Cole was silent for a moment. Then she said, Do you think they'll come back? Jake thought about Commander Vexthor's face on the view screen. The alien had looked shaken, yes, but also thoughtful, like a man who had learned something important. I don't know, General. I hope not. I hope they're smart enough to leave us alone, because if they're not, he trailed off.